Welcome to UNSECURITY, FRSecure's weekly radio show where we take an inside look at hacking, breaches, best practices, and all things you need to know to improve your information security practices. Here's your host, CEO Evan Francine.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the UNSECURITY podcast. This is episode 51, and I'm Brad Nye, your host. Joining me today is my good friend, Evan Francine. Good morning, Evan.
Good morning, Brad. I like when you call me your good friend. I feel like you mean it, so it feels good.
I do.
Yeah. Brad and I are friends.
So, yeah.
Do you see the doves flying?
Right. Look, rainbows.
Yeah.
Joining us this week as a special guest is FRSecure's lead pen tester, Eric Hanson. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's in Reno, and it's early.
Early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit.
And we owe Eric a special thank you on this one because, full transparency. We tried this on Friday because I was traveling yesterday and we had some technical issues with the recording. So Eric's up really early doing this again with us. So thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
no problem.
Technical stuff is
I'm on
hard.
vacation this week, so it's like I got nothing else to do later today, so it's fine. I'll go back to sleep.
There you go.
Podcasting is harder than I thought.
Yeah.
All right.
Security's easy.
Yeah.
Podcasting is tough.
We're learning every time.
So
what's our show today? What are we doing?
Well, so we're going to talk to Eric here, but before we do and talk about a lot of pen testing stuff, let's catch up because, we really haven't seen a lot of each other over the last couple of weeks. You've got the Roadshow going on. I've had some stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So, why don't you catch us up right now with week 4 of the Security Studio Roadshow? How'd it go?
It's a lot of pressure.
I know.
Well, see, it was week 4 last week. So I was out in San Diego. I was out in San Diego. John was out in B-Sides, West Virginia. No, Virginia, but Western Virginia.
Charlottesville area.
Wise? Do you know where Wise is?
It's down by UVA.
That's
like
right.
Bristol and, kind of the southwestern tip down there.
Okay. UVA. That's University of Virginia.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's where he was. I was in San Diego. Met some awesome people. I think in terms of, so what we do is we go out on the roadshow. Really the purpose of the roadshow is just establish new relationships. I told, the ISSA chapter out there on Thursday that, hey, I'm out here to make friends, learn more about, what you're doing in your business. Honestly take some of that and learn, and apply it to our own business. But, we've been doing this since like 2008. Right. So we're kind of old hat in some circles with, security consulting. So it was taking what we know and helping them grow their business. I mean, I think we're seeing some good results in some of these smaller consulting companies and helping them sort of find their way using the tools that we have. So it's good.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I think 9 people. What I do is when I get back, I forget things really fast. So yes, you're laughing because it's true.
Yes, very much so.
So I take the contacts that I made while I was out there, and then put them into our CRM. So I remember who they were and where they came from. And so last week, 9. So, I have 9 new contacts in that CRM. A contact would be somebody that I actually had a substantive talk with, right? Learning about, their business, and it's funny because we've got a lot of people coming up to us now too that want to start their own business. One guy, works at AT&T. He's tired of the whole Fortune 500 thing. You can tell his heart's in the right place. You can tell that he really wants to help small businesses. I'm like, dude, I don't know your circumstances, but if this is a thing, you got to do it. So do it. We'll help you.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, we've definitely been doing a lot of preaching lately. I just got back yesterday afternoon from DC from the ASBO International Association of School Business Officials, their national conference.
Schools do business?
Yeah. So like CFOs and proctors and administrators of more of the business side of school districts all over the country.
Nice.
Talking to them about risk management and some training material that they can take back to their staff and tips and tricks and mentioned, kind of helping out with the roadshow a little bit there I did talk about the S2 org, and
it's free.
Yeah, just go do it. Start somewhere. Even if you don't think you can afford it, just start somewhere.
It's free.
And then if you have questions, we're here to help.
Who can't afford free?
Right. So it was interesting. That was fun. The only bummer was it was just really bad rain and storms. Our session was Sunday afternoon. Sunday morning, I couldn't even see the other side of the Potomac River from the hotel room. It was raining so hard. So just nasty and gross. And about noon, it cleared up. And by 2:45 when I spoke, it was like 72 and sunny and low humidity. So all the afternoon sessions had, a quarter to a third of what the expected. Planning. So kind of a bummer, but I can't say that I blame anyone.
Well, you were speaking on a Sunday.
Yeah, it was a 4-day conference.
Okay.
So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Because Sundays are sort of unusual.
So
for speaking, I can't remember the last time I spoke on a Sunday, but it's kind of weird.
Well, this is the second one this month because I did that board meeting that was on a Sunday.
Oh, board meeting. Yeah. Board people are weird though.
Yeah. So,
you know that.
But it was good. Got a lot of, I think I got through to several people kind of talking about just starting with the basics. And so it was good. I was
putting together the roster of speaking engagements I've done this year, because it just seems like, holy crap, right?
You've done a lot.
Yeah. It was like 30 speaking engagements this year. I did one yesterday, the cybersecurity conference, our cybersecurity summit was downtown at the Minneapolis Convention Center and very well attended. One of the people I ran into there, shout out to Peter Martinson. He was my room monitor.
Okay.
Is that what they call those people?
The bouncer.
Well, yeah, and they're in the back, and they flash the
at 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah,
that's cool.
He flashed 5 minutes, and I was like, I still got like 12 slides to do.
I should
speed
this up.
I sort of was getting in the flow, and then he did that thing, and then he said 2 minutes. I was like, no, we're going like 10 more.
That's funny.
Anyway, it was good. Good talk. It was about the talent shortage problem in our industry, assuming there is such a thing. But it was taking it from 3 different perspectives. The perspective of the industry itself, because you see like we've got 3.5 million openings and people are using words like catastrophic and epidemic and, all these big, scary words. So that was one perspective. The other 2 perspectives, one was from the perspective of somebody who's hiring. So if you're a company looking for talent, these are the ways that I would go about it. And you have options, right? I can either buy talent, go to the market and buy talent. I can grow talent, which is one of the things I think Eric will be able to give us some insight on how he grows, maybe how he grows penetration testers. And then the third option is to outsource it. They all have their pros and cons. Then the third perspective was, what about somebody who's in the market? I'm trying to find a job, right? One of the common things we get all the time is, they're asking for experience, but I can't get into the industry to get the experience, right? So it's this kind of catch-22 thing. It was a good discussion. I think most people stayed awake, so I think it was good talk.
Yeah, there was a insurance convention at the same time.
Oh, that would have been exciting.
Yeah.
They drink a lot.
I don't know. Sunday I was grabbing lunch and just sitting watching the football games, and the guy next to me, we just started talking, and he asked what I was, just general conversations. And turns out he went to school for information security and stuff, but now he's like a investigator, some sort of something for insurance. So if like you file a claim and they think it's fraudulent, he'll look at it. But it's like, well, if you ever decide you're bored with that, here's my card. If you got a security background,
right,
let me know.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's interesting. So get Eric in the loop on this now. Eric, have you done or do you do any speaking engagements?
Up until now, no, not really. But I'd like to. And I've been trying to kind of take a route more toward that lately. I reached out to the local school district and to another contact I know with the JROTC here, and I want to start speaking to kids actually.
Cool.
It's really important to me, I think, to educate young people on kind of security, cybersecurity, and kind of, career options for that, and kind of ways to, if they're interested in that kind of thing, like I was when I was a kid, to do it in a legal and responsible manner. That there's so many resources now that you can do those things. You know what I mean? And teach them that, it's not just an illegal hobby. It's something that you can actually get into and do as a career that people are needed for,
So would that be
the
like
process of trying to do that?
Okay. No, I was going to say, so would that be like things like bug hunting, those types of activities?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's, plenty of bug hunting programs out there that would be a great place for someone to get started if they were, interested in learning more and being involved, and they had a passion for this, but, didn't have an outlet for it, and then on top of it, there's so many just, hack the box type places, boot to root type systems and stuff that people to, test their skills on and learn a little bit more. Some of them are specifically oriented to learning about, new vulnerabilities and stuff so they could stay current and active. For that matter, they, take routes, hacking certain types of things that are going to be more harmless. Single player video games and stuff like that can teach you a lot about memory analysis and, reverse engineering and all kinds of stuff like that. So there's a lot of outlets for it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So real quick, excuse me. I know, who Ben is, right? We won't use his real name. He's been doing some cool research. I think, do you know when he's going to be speaking at ISACA in Chicago? Do you know when that is, or do you want to talk about that at all?
It was either yesterday or today.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I know he was in Chicago yesterday. I just don't know if he was speaking yesterday or if it was today.
That's very cool.
But
I'd love to get a recording of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's been doing some cool research. Basic research. It's stuff. It's the kind of thing. Sometimes research is one of those things that it's just you got to kind of be alert enough to say, hey, this might be a big deal, right? And give him some credit there. He's doing some basic enumeration like you would do on any pen test, but he started looking at it and going, hey, there's stuff here that it's actually kind of a problem, right? And so now he's been kind of traveling around and talking about that stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think he was at B-Sides in Minneapolis maybe a month ago.
Yeah.
And that was pretty, they had him talking. I hate when we have to, so talking on this whole speaking engagement thing. One of the most difficult times to speak is after lunch.
Oh yeah.
In some conferences, there's a morning breakout and then an afternoon breakout, or a morning keynote and an afternoon keynote. And if you speak in a breakout after the afternoon keynote, it's hard to keep people awake, man. Mm-hmm. They're sort of grumpy, they're groggy.
Or they just don't show up because it's nice outside.
Well, there's that too. But it's good to know, Eric, that's one of the things you're looking to do is do more speaking. Because you're definitely somebody, personally, I would love to be in the audience just to hear what you have to say, because I've seen the work that you do, and I love the way you think, so it'd be, yeah. We'll have to get you in front of more people. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the nice words.
All right. So let's talk some pen testing. I think we'll start with one area of confusion we see a lot of is the difference between a pen test and a vulnerability assessment. So I don't know if you want to start and kind of give your take on what the difference is between the two and where people should start.
Yeah, absolutely. With your vulnerability assessment, you're going to be, taking a look at, what you have out there, what kind of services and stuff like that. You're going to be doing a lot of automated scanning, right? You're going to be taking a look at just general known vulnerabilities and discovering those. The real difference between that and a penetration test is you start to get a little bit more detailed on the actual logic of an application or of a service that's out there with a penetration test. You're going to see, with a penetration test, you're going to see a lot more logical flow through something and see kind of how something will impact something else, right? So an example I've given before is, a scanner will detect if you have something like an anonymous login available on FTP, but it won't know the severity of that. Whereas a penetration test is going to be able to say, does this have access to upload? Can it upload to an area that's visible to a website? And then if so, can someone upload code and execute it from a website to get remote code execution? And that kind of logic, that kind of intelligence behind the testing methodology is necessary to find a lot of flaws in an environment. Automated scanning and testing and stuff can get you so far, get you a lot of information. It's a good first step. But the penetration testing is just takes it a step further than that and actually starts to introduce some of that flow.
Now I've seen like two things that seem sort of common, hopefully less common than they used to be. One is companies that sell or sell vulnerability scans as penetration tests. That's one issue. And then the other is companies that go and ask for a penetration test that have never done a vulnerability scan before. Mm-hmm. Talk about both of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a kind of an older school methodology. I think maybe when pen testing was first kind of getting started, where pen testing probably came from somewhere of doing a vuln scan and then just saying, okay, well, I have a critical. Let's use that to get into a system, right? And so it was very hand in hand with vulnerability scanning at some point. And you still see a lot of companies out there and stuff like that will do that, right? They're essentially just doing a vuln scan with validation, right? They're seeing what's on the scan and they're validating whether or not it's an actual vulnerability or if it's a false positive. And that's valuable, but it's just not as valuable as a full penetration test, right? And so you get a lot of confusion where you have, again, people selling kind of the wrong thing, essentially. And then that causes confusion on what people think they want as well. Sometimes people are asking for pen tests because they think they've been getting them the whole time. Mm-hmm. And then they're very surprised to find out that there's different ways of going about this and such. The other side is that, like you said, there's a lot of people who are asking for pen tests, but don't really even know what it is. They've never had one before. And maybe they've never even had, scanning before, and they're jumping straight into the pen test. And obviously that's not always going to be your best bet either, right? Like I said before, vuln scans are a great place to start. It's a good stepping stone for anything, whether it be your, external network, your internal network, or a web application. Scanning it for, common vulnerabilities, common mistakes is going to be a great first step for a while. And then, once you get to that point where you have all that stuff kind of under wraps and you have an understanding of what your environment looks like, going to a penetration test to dig a little deeper and try to find those a little bit more obscure holes is going to be useful. On the other hand, if you go straight into a penetration test, you might end up with just a floodgates opening on you with way too much stuff to really remediate properly for a proper team,
Well, and I think if you go straight to it, you may not get the true value too, right? If you if the doors don't shut and the windows are broken and I can just walk right in, that's not really giving you a lot of value. You could have done some cheaper, quicker alternatives to understand that.
Yeah, it's important to note that there's a pretty large distinction between the cost of a pen test and the cost of a scan. And if your pen test is giving you back all your scan results, basically, you paid too much for it, right? So you want to get those out of the way so that they're not finding that. They're finding other things that were more useful.
And it seems like vulnerability scans really aren't skills dependent as much as penetration testing is, right? So if I was running my own security program, I could do vulnerability scans myself on a regular basis, and I should. Penetration testing would be one of those things where there is more expense to it. I do need a higher skill level, and maybe I'd outsource that if I can't afford to keep it in-house. So, yeah, vulnerability. I don't really see any excuse anymore for not doing vulnerability scans on a regular basis, internally and externally, on all assets, because we also use that to validate our asset inventory. Right. Yeah. We may have, a firewall change that we made, a couple of months ago to test something quickly. We didn't follow proper change control. We left that hole open. You do a vulnerability scan. It's like, oh, crap. Right. That's right. Let's close that thing.
So
we never find breaches like that, right? By the way,
never. I'll use this. I use this analogy this week again on Sunday. So part of the speaking was my daughters had a phrase they wanted me to work into the
phrase?
Yeah, they had a phrase. So they wanted me to say peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Nice.
And I was like, how am I going to work this in? And then I had this great epiphany. I was like, talking to them about risk management, but I think it applies here too. If you're teaching a kid to cook, the first time they ever cook, do you go with like a chicken cordon bleu or some sort of fancy meal? No, you start with the basics. You start with make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
I told my daughter to make me some pad thai.
There you go.
No, I didn't.
No,
I'm kidding.
But I think that does apply, right? The vulnerability basics, scan is the basics. And then, right, that's that you're making that peanut butter and jelly. And then
it's back to chapter 2 of the book too, right? I mean, you have to have this foundation first before you start talking about, the colors of your curtains on the second floor. Right. So it's basic stuff. Tell us, Eric, I've always been sort of, because I love our team and we have such a great penetration testing team. I saw Jake was over at my house yesterday because my daughter was having her birthday party, and Joe, who's also on the team, came over to the house to, celebrate with us. But Jake, I guess, is staying with him for a couple of days while he's kind of getting back into the flow here. So I just love our team. Tell me a little bit about our methodology. How do we do penetration tests, and what do we think makes us kind of special here?
Yeah, we do have a great team. I agree with that. Our methodology at FRSecure is, we take, we're looking to really tackle and help out as much as possible, right? When it comes to, penetration testing methodology and the way to do things, there's a lot of different ways. We spoke of kind of one way of, people will do a scan with validation, right? We like to go about it in a way that is going to get the most out of it. So like for an external, we're going to be, doing a lot of reconnaissance. We're going to be digging into that kind of detail. We're going to be trying to get as much information as we can about what an attacker can get about a company, stuff like that. And then, obviously go in and do manual testing after automated enumeration, stuff like that, and really, really dig in. And with internals and stuff like that, we like to do what's called an assumed breach methodology, right? Where we're kind of we're attacking from the perspective of what the average person, the average company is looking to defend against, right? A lot of times these days, people are getting drive-by attacks of some kind, or they're getting some kind of phishing breach, or someone's clicking on something they shouldn't, downloading something, stuff like that. A lot of times people aren't walking in and plugging into your conference room wall, right? So we're trying to really follow the current attack methods and make sure that we're testing from those perspectives and that we're giving people the best bang for their buck on that. And our team is great because there's a lot of passion in our team. That's one of the big things that we focus on for hiring someone. It's not just what certification you have. Opposite of that, it's more of a, what kind of a fit are you with this environment? What kind of passion do you have about this? Because if you have the right passion, you have the right mindset, we can teach people, so we can grow pen testers internally and kind of teach them, the right ways to go about this and what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish.
I love that. It fits so much with, my philosophy too, right? It's grow people.
Right. It's
so rewarding to see somebody come in, and I've seen you guys do it. I see how you're kind of progressing the team members we have today. Some of them zero experience, right? Maybe they had a college course or two, and to see them sort of progress and get those fundamentals, sort of established, it's super rewarding.
Yeah.
And it's in line with what we talked about yesterday in my talk. Sorry. Go ahead, Eric. I think I interrupted you, maybe.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I do have a little story actually about that in general too, right? Like one of the guys on our team, Kyle, was a good friend of mine before coming to FRSecure, right? Mm-hmm. He was doing 3D modeling and CAD work. He didn't know anything about security, but he was looking for a change. He needed something new in his life. And I said, hey man, I've got a great company that I work for right now. I'd be happy to recommend you, but you're going to have to do some legwork yourself. You're going to have to learn some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. I need a change. And what you do sounds interesting. I'd love to know more about it. So I told him, all right, work on getting Security Plus, right? I'm not going to go for a CISSP. You don't have the years of experience that's needed, right? But go for a Security Plus. He took it seriously. I told him to do it. I think 2 months later, he passed his Security Plus with zero experience with security before that. He was very passionate. He jumped into it and he's like, I want to do this. That's a great opportunity and I want to take it, right? It was a while before we got to hire him, but now, we hired him as an associate analyst, just coming in, doing a lot of scanning, stuff like that, stuff you don't need a lot of security knowledge for, right? He's been here for a year now, and now he's starting to build up in our IR team. He's learned so much about incident response, hunting out threats, figuring things out. It's amazing to see that, a couple years ago, he knew nothing about security and computers, and he was doing 3D modeling, which he's fantastic at, by the way. But then now he's doing this, and that's what we've grown based off of just his passion, right? Take his passion, bring him in, and let's teach him whatever he wants to learn. and it's going so well.
That's interesting. I didn't realize he didn't have that background because, I've really only worked with him the last 2 months or so as he's moved over to the IR team. And yeah, I've been really impressed with how quickly he picks things up and like just the way he thinks and looks at these things.
Yeah. And you can see it on his face. You can see the confidence every time, you see him again. Cause I love Kyle. Kyle is kind of this, I don't know, he's just kind of mild mannered, just at least the way I see him. Yeah. Eric, you know him better. So you've seen probably the crazy side of him and, other parts of it. But I just love how he's just this cool cat, man. But he's perfect. We hire for intangibles.
Right.
We can teach you stuff, right? I mean, it's not rocket science. And if you look at, so much of the technical work we do, it's all logical. It's all binary. It's all do this,
right.
And these things happen, right? Much of it is predictable. What's not is people. So I just, we could do a whole podcast on just the quality of awesomeness in the people we have.
Yeah. I think it goes back to like one of the hard things to like when I was interviewing for IT positions, and the same concept applies here, is I would ask a really, really hard question and say, walk me through your troubleshooting. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they got it right or not. I wanted to hear how they thought through it. Right. Because that's something you it's hard to teach. Right. I can teach you the right way or what to look for, but I want to hear how your brain works to understand, right? Do they kind of get it? Are they're going to go, oh, I have no idea. Right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and not just him, but yeah, everyone, all the associate and entry level kind of coming in with no experience are all just super inquisitive and willing to learn. And
I've said it before, there's no dickheads here.
Right.
I mean, everybody is willing to help each other. It's just really cool. Because I get that question a lot everywhere I go. Because it seems like the younger crowd, the new crop of security people, which we need, by the way, is all more interested in getting in penetration testing or technical things than they are in, hey, you want to write a policy together? You know what I mean? So that's another good question for you, Eric, is, what do you tell people when they come up to you and say, hey, how do I get a job? How do I get into this?
Yeah, I typically tell people, just to start putting yourself out there and display that passion and show people what you have and look for something, because there's a shortage and there's a lot of people out there who will take opportunities on people maybe with a little bit less knowledge, but with the right passion, stuff like us, And then it goes back to some of the things I mentioned earlier, like if you're just looking to practice, hone up on your skills, there's, vulnerable boxes, there's, bug bounties and stuff like that to help continue to hone those skills. But really, you don't necessarily need certification or schooling or specific anything like that for penetration testing, at least, or that kind of thing. It's more about just getting out there, putting yourself out there and applying and showing your passion and showing your ability in other ways, right? The way you think and stuff. Like Brad said, that's really big too. I do a lot of the interviewing, the technical interviewing for our guys. And the biggest thing I do is ask questions that I don't even care if their answer is correct or not, right? Just like Brad said, I'm sitting there listening to see, are they shutting down under that pressure of not knowing the answer to this? Or are they trying to think it through? Are they talking it through? Are they asking questions? Are they, curious now? Are they kind of going into it more and trying to find those passionate folks?
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned one of the things in the methodology too, which I thought was interesting because it takes, I think, a little bit more work, was just the importance of reconnaissance and maybe some OSINT, mixing that in at the front end of penetration testing. How important is that? How important is learning, OSINT in your opinion?
It's very important. There's a lot, I'll say this, like on the opposite side of things, there's a lot of external penetration tests that we do where there's just nothing found in OSINT, right? It's very common, but we just don't find anything very useful. But that doesn't mean it's not important, right? You find those occasional situations where you're going to find some information. We've seen PDF documents actually on a different, let's say we're pen testing a service provider of some kind, right? And we'll find a document that another company who's using the service has out there, and they have their login information in this document. So now we can log into the service provider using that person's credentials, or at least create an account, maybe using their company code or something like that, right? And we can go a little bit further. So finding that kind of stuff is useful, right? And obviously beforehand, we'd be careful about what information we're accessing, contacting our contacted our, customer, and making sure that we're not going to be going into someone's personal information or something like that. But finding that information is very useful, and knowing how to do that and having kind of the right intuition to hunt that stuff down is really valuable.
Yeah, that's cool. Did I tell you that my wife is learning OSINT? She had me help her set up a VM on her machine. We didn't have admin access because it's a work machine, so we're going to have to get we're going to have to go buy, a separate computer, but it's kind of cool. She's doing OSINT, and I'm like, everything.
Funny.
Well, and then she'll ask me questions, and I go, like, every time you ask me a question about this, do you realize you get just a little bit sexier to me? Yeah, it's cool. I mean, because OSINT is something that anybody can do. I think, it doesn't require a ton of technical skill unless you really want to get into it, right? Because then you're going to have to learn, some scripting. You might make your own, some of your own tools. But it's that inquisitive mind. It goes back to, I think, what Eric was saying, and we all agree. It's those intangibles. Can you work through problems? Can you find things? Are you curious?
Yeah. Are you willing to settle for no? Is what a lot of it comes down to too, right? Like, I didn't find it here, but am I going to give up?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some pen testers. Well, that brings up a whole nother thing too, right? In our methodology, because I know we struggle with that. We have in the past is just scope.
Yeah. When do we say stop?
Right. If this project was scoped for 20 hours and I'm at 20 hours, but man, I don't want to give up yet.
Right.
That's hard.
There's scope creep from both sides, right? Sometimes we'll have customers who will give us the wrong scope and it'll start to creep out. But there's also our side, right, where we're not willing to accept our own failure sometimes. So it's always a battle. Although it's a bit of a balance.
I will say, as coming from the senior management side of things, I'm okay with that, right? Mm-hmm. I'd rather have to rein you guys in than be like whipping to be like, why aren't you doing your jobs? It's like, no, don't do so much of your job.
Right.
Yeah, it allows you to have that confidence that you're doing a good job, right? The team's doing a good job. If you're having to rein them in, at least you're not going to say, well, we might not have done a good enough job here.
Right.
You know what I mean? We know we always spend that time.
Right. And I think Oscar's done a really good job with you guys from what I've seen of, empowering you to know and what the process is to say, hey, I know I'm kind of at the timeline, but man, I'm like 5 hours from just blowing this open, and letting you guys have that leash when it's appropriate.
Yeah. And a lot of our guys too, they work within a kind of let's say it's supposed to be this, let's say it's supposed to be, 30 hours, but we're supposed to have it done this week, right? If we work 40 hours this week because we decided to put in some extra time, extra 4 hours here and there or something like that, right? Like, it's one of those things, like, as long as we get it done this week, if we want to explore that passion further, if we want to push ourselves, we want to stretch our legs a little bit and really see if we can get this thing, then we'll do it, and nobody's, you don't feel burnt out. No one made you do it. And you decided, hey, I'm just going to get it done this week either way, but I'm going to put on a little extra time and I'm going to really see what we can do here. Because a lot of times we get some good information out of that. It's like R&D on the job, so it's cool.
Yeah. And I love this team because this team nobody takes shortcuts.
Right.
Because I know it's so tempting because I've done, so much work over the years and I don't do much anymore. I'm just kind of.
You just travel now?
Yeah. Just travel the world. But I know that there's always that, temptation to take a shortcut, maybe to leave something out of a report because it's just going to mean a whole, 5 more paragraphs of writing or, something. But I see in this team such a passion and such a willingness to do things right and to be right by the customer that, the quality of their work is top notch. They just don't take shortcuts. Love it.
I think, it sounds corny, I know, before I say it, but I think the important thing about that is that you only try to take shortcuts in things you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, everybody on the team, everybody, I think we have at FRSecure in general, wants to do what they're doing. And so it helps, right? You don't want to take a shortcut if you enjoy what you're doing and you want to keep doing it.
That's true. Very good point.
So I think I'm going to segue off of that and ask you a little bit more about what you do here at.
Yeah, what do you do here?
What would you say you do here, Eric?
Well, I've been a penetration tester at FRSecure for a few years now. And then just in the last 2-3 months, something like that, I've moved over to a role of just being responsible for training and team development, and continue to develop our methodology, a little bit of R&D, but mostly just training up guys on things that they don't know yet and they want to learn. So working one-on-one with I think 4 or 5 different guys right now on training up on different skills that they're looking to accentuate or build.
That's cool.
Yeah. So what would be like the path from a pen test perspective, right? You got external, internal, web app are really the big 3 that we do. Mm-hmm. What would be the path that someone would take?
Like from
coming in from like as an entry level, hey, you got the right start. Where do they start? What do they do? What does that look like? That growth projection?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, it's been kind of you'll jump in and be kind of like I was talking about with Kyle earlier, start off with like scanning and things like that, right? With me in the role I'm in now, you'll start off, we bring people in and we're starting them off right away on kind of the projects like external penetration tests, right? External penetration tests are typically a little less eventful. And they, a lot of times people know how to secure those a little bit better. There's definitely some big findings and stuff you'll see, but a lot of times they're a little bit more uneventful. So they're a good place to start for someone who's getting into it. And so, we work with people, get them on that right away and get them training alongside me. And then we get that going on. Then from there, it's kind of a question of like, where do you want to go? The external phase of things is making sure that you understand the general methodology of attacking something, how to enumerate that thing, how to do reconnaissance, how to be careful about it, how to reach out to a customer in a sensitive situation, and how to speak to customers, how to deliver reports and stuff like that, right? Write those reports. So that gets all of those things out of the way. And then after that, and once someone has gotten really experienced with that, it's a question of like, where do you find your interest lies more? Web applications and internal penetration or internal network penetration testing are very much different. If someone has had more experience previously as a system administrator or something like that, they might lean toward wanting to do internal stuff or move toward red teaming, things like that of the internal nature. Maybe if they've had some experience doing some web application creation, stuff like that in the past, or they've done a lot of bug bounties when they were kind of learning and stuff, they might be more inclined to go to web applications. So we try to feel that out, right? And see where someone wants to go, and then just start taking them down that route after they're ready.
Okay. Makes sense.
It does make sense. I like it.
It
makes me want to start my career again.
I'd love to train you.
I know, man. It would be so much fun to be.
Yeah.
The way we didn't have, you just kind of did things.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, we were so much more focused on making things work as opposed to breaking things. But I got so good at breaking things that I became better at breaking things.
Or fixing things, and you became better at breaking because you could fix.
Yeah. Like I can remember taking down, enterprise firewalls.
Oh, okay.
Because I made because you entered the wrong command or,
Oh, gotcha,
something.
gotcha.
Like one time I corrupted a PIX 520. So PIX 520s were the big 4U firewalls,
Way back.
Yeah. And there were memory restrictions, but there was no bounds. So I was trying to upload a new iOS version and it was PIX OS then, to the firewall. But I didn't check to see if I had enough memory in the firewall to accept this image that I was about ready to lay down. And I was one of those, I'm still a fly by the seat of your pants guy, right? So I was the same way then. And they were in failover, right? So I had active passive, which was like totally new then too, right? So it was like, it's like definitely a straw house, right? When you put those things together that way. The image was too big for the memory. So firewall crash, right? And like bricked, essentially. Unless I hook up a serial cable and then try to apply a new image, the right image through that. Well, anyway, it's downtime. And this was at Jask Software. And so now any old-time Jaskers will remember then, probably now. Because I didn't really fess up. I didn't like, hey, I did it, But we were like top 10 busiest websites in the world at that point because we had Paint Shop Pro. Yeah. Everybody wanted Paint Shop Pro because it was either Paint Shop Pro or Adobe Photoshop. And Adobe Photoshop was like $1 billion.
Right.
So we were about 3 million website visits a day, right? And I decided that I wanted to apply this patch. I was going to fail over, apply this. Well, anyway, it took down the firewalls for like 3 hours. Yeah, but I would have never learned how to deal with that had I not done that. But that was how I learned a lot of security stuff, was doing stupid.
Yeah.
So now I know the importance of change control.
Mm-hmm.
I know why we do things after hours. I know why you always have a backup plan. I know why we like to test things before we do things.
Everything, yeah.
But you learn, through that stuff. I would love to go through kind of what it's like today, where you can learn some of these awesome new skills, but then also, tap into some of the wisdom of people that have already,
yeah,
got their battle wounds.
I'd agree. I think, given my background, I would, you and I are in the same boat, and where you get to that point where you're like, okay, do I go super technical and do the pen testing and all that, or do I split to more of the management and oversight?
Technology is easier than people.
And I know.
Stay in technology.
So yeah, going back, it would be fun to, using my background, to have Eric kind of show the internals, and that'd be fun. But unfortunately I don't have time for that.
No, I'm really happy though about, we have these, we do have some junior, penetration testers here, and just knowing that they're in good hands. So Eric, just kudos to you. I love what you're doing with the team.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
So I guess one of I do want to bring up, so we've talked about external, internal, and web application, but one of the things that we get asked occasionally, but not a whole lot, is around mobile application pen testing. Do you want to talk about that just kind of briefly, and what that entails, or what that actually looks like?
Yeah. So with mobile application, there's kind of two different sides of it, at least the way I look at it. A lot of times what people are looking for is along the same lines as kind of just a web application pen test. And a lot of times that's how we'll sell it, right? If they're looking at the way an application that they've created for iOS or Android or whatever is communicating with some endpoints out there on a web application, then a lot of times what we'll do is we'll set up, we'll take our Android phone or our iOS phone, and we will put a proxy between it and take a look at the requests that are being made. And we'll kind of treat it just like it's a web application that's requesting out to some endpoints somewhere, some APIs, et cetera. And we'll start to, attack those APIs and those endpoints and really go after that. And in that scenario, that's basically a web application penetration test. The other side of it is taking a look at the actual application itself, the archive that's being, run on the phones, and seeing, if that was to be cracked open and taken a look at internally, is there some kind of functionality in there that can be, used maliciously? Is there any kind of certificates or other types of information, credentials, something like that can be used to gain access back to a home server, or to gain access to something else, or, just sensitive information in general that shouldn't be included in there? Maybe the development process was not following the right workflow, or maybe they just didn't realize something could be gained access to. So that's kind of the two different angles from my perspective.
All right. That's good. I think the first time you explained that, or we went through it, it's like, oh, that makes a ton of sense. I hadn't thought of it that way. I was like, I don't know how you test a mobile app, but it's logical.
You put it in the mobile. You put it in the mobile app testing machine.
Right.
Push go.
Well, I was like, do you have to have like VMs of different phones and versions and all that stuff? And I guess, there is that if they're actually looking for the code itself on the phone and running, but I think most of the time it's that communication and how it's working through the back, to the back end servers. So,
well, I think at the end of the day, right, it's having that conversation with the customer, like, what do you actually want to test? Mm-hmm. Define what you want to accomplish first, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. So the conversation.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, that's a conversation we have a lot too, from the white box and black box and whatnot, testing methodologies too. Just trying to figure out what exactly people want to test, right?
Yeah. And, that is a good, maybe real quick, explain the difference between a white box and a black box test, and which one do we do and why?
Yeah, absolutely. White box, black box are kind of the extremes of a spectrum, right? So there's no real clear cut way to handle each one, but essentially black box means to have less data, to have perhaps no data going into an engagement, right? You have to figure it all out on your own. And then white box is more toward the open side, where, you know, the customer, the company, the organization you're working with is going to give you as much information as you need to get the job done, right? And there's every variation of shade in between, where they're willing to give you this, but maybe not this, or, you know, they'll whitelist you on a web application firewall and give you information about their endpoints and maybe an administrator login to enumerate that stuff, but they're not going to give you the source code, right? So there's, you know, variations there. We tend to prefer the lighter end of that spectrum, the kind of more white box attack. And that's just because typically that's what everyone needs, right? There's definitely other needs out there. There's definitely good reasons to do a black box test. But on average, I think most people are looking to find vulnerabilities in their environment, and they're not looking to necessarily find vulnerabilities in their firewall, let's say, or something else like that. So typically, we'll want to kind of make sure that we're spending time on the actual resource that is owned by the organization we're working with, right? If we were to do a black box test, we're going to spend a lot more time kind of just generally enumerating some information about it and hitting firewalls and hitting different things and backing off. And it's going to take either longer, or we're just not going to get as much actually to the environment of the organization we're working with. We're going to be testing their firewalls more, the web application firewalls. We're going to be testing more of the devices and the, you know, things that intrusion protection and or prevention and detection systems that they have, things like that. So if that's what someone wants to test, by all means, we'll test it. But realistically, most of the time, we want to see where the actual vulnerabilities lie in the configurations, in the development, you know, things like that. So,
as to say, so white box is really going to give probably more bang for the buck, because, you know, you're guaranteed we're going to test exactly what you need tested. I mean, black box, the reality is, as good as you are, you might miss something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even on a white box, we might miss something, right? There's just that's the nature of the engagement. But
right.
At the end of the day, it's a question of where do you know, it's an expensive engagement you're typically paying for. Where do you want that money spent? Do you want to test a firewall, or do you want to test your devices themselves, you know, or your configurations themselves, right? The things that you actually have control over.
Well, and don't get wrapped around the axle either, right? I mean, cover the basics, you know, of security. What are your most significant risks, and really focus your time and your money there,
right? If
you can. I mean, if you understand what those things are. But yeah, it's always been that argument back and forth: white box, black box, pink box, yellow box, green box.
Which rainbow box do you want?
Yeah, just do a test.
Yeah. One thing we see sometimes, like I said, there are good reasons for black box. I would never devalue that. There's some good reasons, but sometimes what we'll see is people want to do black box because they just don't want to get the problems found. That's, you know, something I definitely steer people away from. You know, it's one of the things that a pen test is not trying to make you look bad. It's trying to make you look like a hero that found your problems and is going to fix them. Right.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, that was a good discussion. Hopefully we answered some common questions and cleared up misconceptions people might have about pen testing. You know, it is serious business, and like Evan, you know, the show notes say we are very grateful to have, you know, such a highly skilled team here, doing the work that they do. So, before we wrap up, we'll dig into a couple of news stories here. First one is Avast and NordVPN breaches tied to phantom user accounts. This is on Krebs on Security. And, you know, the Avast breach was linked to a, stolen credentials for a VPN service configured to connect to the internal network, and did not have MFA, configured. So they found an issue, where a temporary VPN profile had been erroneously kept enabled and did not require multi-factor. Whoops. You shouldn't do that. And then the Nord.
That's what your report should say too. Shouldn't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Remediation step. Don't do that.
Yeah. The other one is, on NordVPN, and this was a breach from March of 2018 out of one of the data centers in Finland. And the attacker gained access to a single NordVPN server by exploiting an insecure remote management system left by the data center provider that NordVPN was unaware existed. And then the provider removed that remote management account without notifying them on March 20th of last year. So there's a bunch of there's a lot there.
Yeah. Well, they removed it after discovering the breach and just didn't notify them.
Right.
Which is, yeah.
Well, and then,
any service provider who discovers a breach and doesn't notify you is someone you shouldn't be working with.
Yeah, that's not going to go well. But, and I don't think Nord is completely without blame. How did they have this breach and somebody in their server for 2-3 weeks or however long and not have any notification or logs? Oh, was it for a full year?
Yeah. I don't know how long they were in before the data center found out about it. It was a year later that Nord found out about it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Not good. So,
well, and the other question is like, okay, fine. I get that someone else is hosting your stuff. You're housing your stuff in the data center. How did you not know that they had a method to log in, administrate your systems?
Right. Yeah.
It's one thing to say like, hey, we had to do it. We knew it was there. We didn't know how insecure it was. It's another thing to say we didn't know it existed. That's an interesting one to me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That'll be interesting. I think I haven't seen a ton of real details on this. And I'm wondering, there's going to probably be a lot behind the scenes from a legal perspective that.
What was interesting, right after the announcement was the number of air quotes experts that were telling you, you got to drop Nord. It's,
right.
You go to your own homegrown VPN. It's like, no.
It was
chill out.
One server out of 3,000 for
right. I'm not
this, and it, yeah.
Because I happen to be a NordVPN user.
Same.
And I didn't drop it.
Mm-mm.
I mean,
I happen to be a homegrown VPN user.
Well, then there's nothing wrong with that,
No.
right? I mean, but you don't, just because something like this happens, put it into context with everything else and then react accordingly.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's not like they published something or did something in like negligent.
Nefarious, right?
Yeah.
I'll give them some credit too that they've been very vocal about it. They've come out, they've, been posting information, the most valid information, the most information you can find on the subjects I found is from their own postings, their own articles about it. They're being very transparent, as transparent as they can, so
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they're kind of going, hey, like we get that this happened, but what came of it? If anything, it proved that we're not holding any logs. There was no valuable information for anyone to get on your data, right? No one could get into any of your streams or anything like that. So it was, they're kind of going like, we know it was a bad thing. We got rid of that person, but at the same time, it also proves that what we've been saying about our service this whole time is accurate.
Yeah. So the second story this week was out of infosecurity-magazine.com. Senators urge AWS investigation after Capital One breach. So they're looking at the former AWS software engineer, Paige Thompson, who's been accused by prosecutors on attacks on Capital One and a bunch of other organizations. The reports are, and Eric, I know this is your favorite, so I'm going to read the paragraph or the sentence. Reports have hitherto focused on a misconfigured web application firewall hosted by the bank in the AWS cloud as the main factor in the attack. But
so it's the word hitherto.
Yeah.
Hitherto, yeah.
But
heretofore.
Here you go. But really, what the thought is that she used this to conduct a server-side request forgery attack, and that they're saying, well, Microsoft and Google have taken steps to protect customers from those attacks, but AWS hasn't.
I think at the end of the day, I mean, like a server-side request forgery attack is an attack where you're able to take advantage of some kind of vulnerability to have a server do a request on your behalf and potentially return data back to you. Not always, and it's SSRF, right? But in this case, that was the case. And, AWS and other cloud hosts and stuff will have some servers that are available to a host and only to that host, right? So the cloud hosted device or machine has access to a metadata server within AWS, and it can only be accessed from that host from internally, right? And so they took advantage of this to request data that they shouldn't have. But there's a lot of vulnerabilities in general in the application. The configuration of the application had to be present to make this happen. And so placing the blame on AWS or Amazon is a bit silly. At the same time, though, I agree. I think if there is something that AWS can do I'm not familiar with what Microsoft or Google have put in place, but the article is stating they have. And if there's something that AWS can do, they should, right?
Yeah.
I would never place the blame on them.
Yeah, I think, that'll be interesting to follow and see what happens. I guess they're saying, right, if you could have taken these extra steps to prevent it, you should have, but.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So
back to your original advice. Don't do that.
Yeah, please.
I just tweeted.
Don't do that.
I just tweeted that.
There you go. Third and fourth stories today are both around some new malware and ransomware. So scmagazine.com, new Medusa Locker ransomware looks to make a monster profit. Clever headline. So, Malware Hunter team found this in late September. There's a really good write-up about what it actually does. But yeah, it's just a new one that it's out there, and following encryption ransomware sleeps for a minute before scanning for additional files, and to encrypt and creates persistence by setting a scheduled task that relaunches the program every half hour. So just some new ransomware there. Some
goodies.
Yeah. And then the last one, this one is, I thought was actually pretty good or pretty interesting, is out of Threat Post. Raccoon malware scavenges 100,000 plus devices to steal data. And I think the biggest takeaway from this one is it's malware as a service. So now over 100,000 endpoints within a few months, easy to operate for technical and non-technical individuals. Stealer is developed by a team that appears to originate in Russia and is Russian speaking. So, $200 a month to use, and features like an automated back-end panel, hosting, and customer support. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it is interesting to see where things have gone, where now we're having professional services offered for malware.
Yeah. And given where it's coming out of, there's not going to, it's going to be tough to take that down.
Yeah. It's
just imagine the job postings hiring a UX designer for malware out as a service site.
That reminds me of another story. I'm not going to tell it right now. I was asked to do an IR way back when to defend a porn site. I turned it down.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note.
No, yeah. Stick to your scruple. Have some scruples for crying out loud.
Yeah. We don't have to take everything that comes in.
No.
All right. So episode 51 is a wrap. Like many of you, we've got another busy week. Special thanks to you, Eric, for joining us this week.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for having me. I feel like it went really well. I think you guys are like the jelly on the peanut butter. We make a great peanut butter jelly sandwich.
Hey, nice.
That is for your kids right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make sure they listen.
I was going to lick myself to find out what flavored jelly I am, but I'll save that for later.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thank you to our loyal listeners. Thank you for the tips and the feedback. Send us wisdom, questions, advice, whatever. Email us at unsecurity@protonmail.com. If you're the social type, socialize with us on Twitter. I'm at Brad Nye. Evan is at Evan Francine. Security Studio is at Security Studio, and FRSecure is at FRSecure. Eric, do you want to give yourself a plug?
Yeah, I don't post very often, but it is at Vimking, which is VIMK1NG.
Nice.
Lead speak.
Right.
Love it.
All right.
You got to have it for my job, man.
That's right. It comes with the territory.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the UNSECURITY podcast. We value our listeners and would love to hear from you. Give us your feedback by emailing us at unsecurity@protonmail.com. That's UNSECURITY@PROTONMAIL.com. Be sure to tune in next week to hear the latest insights from Brad and Evan.